So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that. Miles, and let's see, let me get my computer working here. There. Okay, and I have Timothy with me on the phone. He's going to defend the position that birds are dinosaurs, or dinosaurs are birds, whichever he prefers. Let's see, birds are dinosaurs. So our channel is drdino.com. My website, the channel here is Kent Hovind Official, Kenthovind, Kent Hovind Official. All right, Timothy, tell us about yourself and your channel, and you go first and tell me why you think birds are dinosaurs.
Absolutely. So I'm Timothy. I go by the Dapper Dinosaur on YouTube. If you search that, and maybe you search creationism or something like that, it'll probably come up. And I am I guess a science enthusiast. I'm not officially a scientist or anything. I haven't published any papers in the field, but I've consulted with paleontologists on this topic, and I've done reading in the primary and secondary literature on it, and so I feel fairly confident. And my channel is mostly focused on the science of paleontology, evolution, and comparative anatomy. Those are the big focuses. So yeah, I guess I will go ahead and pull up my opening. So first, let me say what I'm not. Oh, hold on.
I'm seeing a mess on the screen.
Oh, is it not working?
No, it's working. Just
okay. Are people seeing my screen? Because
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, whenever whoever's talking, that screen is showing.
Oh, good. Okay, just making sure. All right. So first, let me say what I'm not arguing in arguing that birds are dinosaurs. I'm not arguing that all dinosaurs are birds. Triceratops, Allosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, Stegosaurus are all emphatically not birds. To keep it with birds, you can kind of think of it like this. All ducks are birds, but since many birds are not ducks, not all birds are ducks. The same is true for dinosaurs. Not all of them are birds, or even terribly bird-like. Second, I'm not arguing that all birds share a common ancestor either with each other or with animals like Velociraptor or Brachiosaurus. If special creation is true, then God created various organisms inside certain patterns, such as mammal, dinosaur, crustacean, whatever. The creationist is under no obligation to believe that whales, humans, bats, and kangaroos share a common ancestor in order to notice that they are all warm-blooded animals with hair that give milk, have inner ear bones from the embryonic pharyngeal arches, and have a dentary muscle jaw joint. And any animal with those characteristics is a mammal, whether or not evolution is true. So if God created them separately, he still made them all mammals. In the same way, I will only be arguing that birds are dinosaurs based on their anatomy. And if this is due to common ancestry, then so be it. But if it's also just because God created them that way, then so be it. So why are birds dinosaurs? And specifically theropods. And that's a group that includes animals like Allosaurus, Dilophosaurus, Velociraptor, Tyrannosaurus. Well, dinosaurs are archosaurs, and I'm going to start there. Archosaurs are a group of reptiles with certain anatomical features. Oh, I need to change my slide here. There we go.
There we go.
Oh, that just went over that. Sorry, I forgot. I keep forgetting things. So birds are archosaurs. Let's see. So archosaurs are a group of reptiles with certain anatomical features. One of the biggest of which is one that's actually a characteristic of diapsids, which is almost everything we would call a reptile, like lizards, snakes, the tuatara, all that stuff. It's 2 skull openings in the back right here where I'm circling. And these are for jaw muscle attachments. They're called the temporal fenestrae. So birds still have these recognizable openings, but they've also moved some of the bone between them so the openings also open to each other. And that's back here in this bird skull. Okay. So another important feature of archosaurs is the antorbital fenestra, which is here and here. That is an opening in front of the eye sockets. Birds retain this feature, as again you can see in this skull. So this opening houses an air sac, a bit like your sinus, which helps reduce the weight of the skull. And interestingly, this air sac is found in birds and in their archosaur cousins, crocodilians, like alligators and crocodiles, even though for crocodilians, they close the opening up as embryos. Okay. So also interesting is that, like all reptiles, bird scales and feathers are composed not of alpha keratin, like mammal hair or fingernails, but beta keratin, which is only found in birds and other reptiles, such as lizards and crocodiles. So, unlike lizards, but like mammals, archosaurs have thecodont teeth. That is, teeth in individual sockets, as opposed to ones that erupt straight from the bone or originate in a groove like those of lizards and snakes. While all living birds lack teeth, some fossil birds like Hesperornis or Enantiornis have teeth. And I know that Kent has agreed that some birds were created with teeth, and bird teeth back when they existed were thecodont, as in the case of this Bohyornis. So, oops, sorry. Last, we come to a feature on the archosaur femur called the fourth trochanter, which is here. It's a projection of bone where a particular muscle attaches. That is the caudofemoralis longus, a muscle that today is only found in crocodilians and birds, but that was also present in all extinct dinosaurs. This muscle is the main retractor muscle for the femur, so it pulls the leg back, and so is crucial for the locomotion of archosaurs. So now we can confirm that just based on their anatomy, and this, by the way, is a Critosaurus, which is a kind of duck-billed dinosaur, and this is a turkey vulture femur. So now we have enough anatomical features to confirm the birds are archosaurs, which is just a taxonomic grouping like mammal or, I don't know, cetacean like whale. So as a side note, except for the diapsid skull and beta keratin, all of these same reasons are also reasons that we know that dinosaurs are not big lizards, because lizards lack all of these characteristics, both in living and fossil forms. And there are a few others that we know, a few other reasons we know dinosaurs aren't lizards. So, let's see. So birds are archosaurs by virtue of their anatomy, but are they dinosaurs? Well, a dinosaur must have a crocodile reverse, that's this one, ankle joint, between the astragalus and the calcaneum, which are 2 ankle bones. So these bones must not articulate against each other in any other plane except the sagittal. That's in line with the center point, or sorry, the central line of your body if you were to draw it right down the middle. So, well, birds have this kind of ankle arrangement. So they have this particular feature that's key for dinosaurs. Let's see. Also, dinosaurs have a structure called a synsacrum, where these vertebrae are fused to the sacral arches here. Well, birds have the same thing. In fact, this is a perching bird, and this is a sauropod, like a brachiosaurus. It's actually a chasmosaurus, but not many people know what that one is. So, birds are also the only known animals today to have hard-shelled eggs. Other animals, like other reptiles and mammals that lay eggs, have soft, leathery eggshells or no eggshells, like frogs. So, also, all known dinosaurs, well, dinosaur eggs at least that we found, show evidence of hard eggshells with these sharp, defined cracks where they're cracked. Oops. So, lastly, in terms of birds being dinosaurs, birds have an open acetabulum. That's this little hole here in the hip. In other words, their hip socket is a ring of bone rather than just a pocket-like structure like it is in your hip or those of all other animals that aren't dinosaurs. Once again, birds have this open acetabulum, as you can see in this drawing of, I believe it's a duck pelvis, but I would have to double check. So again, their hip is just like that of any other dinosaur in this case. So we already know that birds meet every criterion to be a dinosaur just based on their anatomy. So again, these are reasons that birds are dinosaurs, but also that dinosaurs aren't lizards, since lizards lack all these features as well. Further, though, birds are theropods. And like non-bird theropods such as Velociraptor, they have feathers, a wishbone, a radius and ulna that lock together, and a system of air sacs that provide unidirectional respiratory system, and semi-lunate carpal bones. So here we have a Tyrannosaurus wishbone. Here we have several different dinosaur hands, all with a semi-lunate carpal, including one that's actually a bird. And this is a fairly recent discovery, but recently an Allosaurus skeleton was found that was very well preserved and actually had the same impressions for the air sac system that birds use to facilitate their unidirectional breathing. So the air only comes in one set of pipes and goes out the other set. And this Allosaurus actually had all the same scarring on its skeleton that indicated the same set of anterior air sacs, posterior air sacs, and lung. So, okay. And just in case you think that it's only Archaeopteryx that has feathers, there are actually some 50 or so dinosaur genera for which feathers are absolutely known to have existed based on actual fossil evidence. And it can be inferred that a large number of other very similar genera also had them. And here we have pictured Genuine-long Caudipteryx, Sinoscalopteryx, Sinornithosaurus, Sinosauropteryx, and Eutyrannus being a tyrannosaur, all of which have direct fossil evidence for feathers. Well, we also have Alan Fiducia, who I think Kent may have heard of. I know I've heard you reference him before. And he says that, oh no, these aren't feathers, these are just collagen fibers that have been preserved. Well, we know he's wrong for a few reasons. One is these fossils contain such detailed branching patterns that they are morphologically identical with feathers, but not with collagen. In fact, we can scan them so closely that we now actually know that some of these dinosaurs had iridescent feathers, like a crow or some parrots, so that they would shine in different colors depending on the angle that you looked at them in. Also, collagen doesn't have melanosomes, but feathers do, and so do the preserved feathers that we've seen in many forms of these feathered dinosaurs. So, in fact, we can scan these preserved feathers so closely that we can tell if the feathers were rufous, which is reddish, browny kind of rust color, or had black melanin. And that's how we know this animal on screen here, the Sinosauropteryx prima, we actually know that that's what color it was based on the melanosomes that we can see with scanning electron microscopes. All right, so what has to be done to refute this point that birds are dinosaurs? It's really simple. All you have to do is either show that birds don't have the anatomy that I've said they do. So find a bird that has a closed acetabulum, or a bird whose astragalus and calcaneum articulate in another plane, or find a bird, just without these characteristics. Or if you can find a bird that has a characteristic that is a important trait for a different taxon outside of Dinosauria, you could also refute it. So for instance, if you found a bird with a parietal foramen, that's a hole at the top of the skull where the pineal gland is exposed to light that lizards have, that would mean birds aren't dinosaurs. Or if in embryonic development you found a bird where the first little divot that appears when the bird is still just a sphere of cells becomes a mouth, that would prove birds aren't dinosaurs. And in fact, that one would disprove all of evolution. So good luck on that one. That would be a great one. And I believe that's it for my opening. And there's one interesting note. All of the life reconstructions that I use in this slideshow, so there's one, there's the other, and Anchiornis is the last one. The reason I picked these is because all of these colors that you see are actually based on the melanosomes found in the preserved feathers. So there is no question that these are collagen fibers. And with that, I will end my opening.
Well, thank you, Timothy, for coming on and defending your belief that birds are dinosaurs. I'd like to point out the obvious to the audience. Nobody has ever seen a bird today produce a non-bird. They look nothing like the dinosaurs. The fact that there are some similarities would not prove a common ancestor. It would prove a common creator. I think Ford two-door trucks and four-door trucks probably have a lot of similarities because they're both built by Ford. So I think what you're pointing out, Timothy, without realizing it, is evidence for creation. The same creator chose the same design structure for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, that's what works. I mean, it works really good. Most animals have two eyes. Some are forward-facing, some are sideways-facing, but two eyes is redundant for in case one gets injured, obviously, but also to get binocular vision, and you get depth perception that way. And so that's not evidence of evolution, it's evidence of a designer. I wish you could go back and re-listen, Timothy, to everything you just said and look at it from the way most people are going to look at this, like, this is evidence that the same designer made them. The holes in the skull, the similarities in the pelvic structures, etc. Let me just cover a few thoughts here. Archaeopteryx had all the brain features of a bird equipped for flight. Archaeopteryx means ancient wing, is what the word means. It had claws on the wings, and their argument is that this is evidence it's coming from a creature with claws, like a dinosaur or something like that. Stale added, some of the ornithologists call the Hoatzin primitive because of its Archaeopteryx-like claws. The Hoatzin today has claws on its wings. So that's not proof of anything, it's just an unusual bird that has claws on its wings. Swans, ibis, and many other birds have wing claws. They just never make use of them that we know of. Here is a Hoatzin, I believe, with the claws on the wings. They will point out that Archaeopteryx had teeth in its beak. Well, that's an unusual feature for birds, but there's a hummingbird in Ecuador, South America, that has 48 teeth in its mouth. So having teeth or not having teeth is not proof of any ancestor. Birds today produce birds. Reptiles produce reptiles. Dinosaurs produce dinosaurs. There are no exceptions, none. If you want to dream or imagine, like Spongebob, that there's some kind of relationship, that is pure imagination. We probably could find thousands of words that have very similar spelling, maybe just one letter difference, like run and ruin. Wow, only one letter difference. It's a completely different word with a different meaning. So the fact that some birds have teeth, some don't. Okay, some mammals have teeth, some don't. Some people have teeth, some don't. Okay, so that's not proof of anything as far as common ancestor. I cover in my seminar on drdino.com the problem with what you're teaching here. Charles Darwin, when he went to Ecuador, South America, right there, the Galapagos Islands off the coast of Ecuador, he studied the birds. He hated birds because birds ate worms, and Charlie liked worms. So he shot every bird he could find just because to rescue the worms. The guy was a serious mental case, in my totally unbiased and completely humble opinion. But he sailed around the Galapagos Islands on HMS Beagle because he couldn't find a job anywhere else, and his dad got him on there as the captain's companion for 5 years because they would feed him. Charlie, only degree he ever got was a degree in theology, graduated from college to be a preacher. As Charlie sailed around on the islands, he noticed there were 14 varieties of finches based upon their beak shape. He studied them very carefully and concluded they probably had a common ancestor called a finch. That's all anybody's ever observed. These changes you're pointing out, these similarities you're pointing out in the hip structure or the head structure or the back of the cranium or the jaw structure are not at all evidence of relationship. Timothy, I don't know how you can't see that. They're evidence of a common designer. The Grants went down there and spent a fortune living in the Galapagos Islands for years, 10 years, I believe, and noticed that during dry years, the beak of the finch was a little bit thicker, and during wet years, it was a little bit thinner. Okay, these lines are calibrated to be 1/10 of 1 millimeter. So the beak is 1/10 of a millimeter thicker on average during dry years. Duh, only the birds with the tough beak survive to crack the harder nuts during dry years. It's not. So Darwin counted 14 varieties of finches and concluded they had a common ancestor called a bird. I would agree. But then Charlie wrote his book, and you have fallen for it completely, Timothy, that The Origin of Species. He said it's a truly wonderful fact that all animals and all plants throughout all time and space should be related to each other. Charlie, if you see 14 kinds of finches, that doesn't prove finches are related to mosquitoes and whales and bananas. This is silly. Charlie observed what we call microevolution, variations within the same kind. There are hundreds of varieties of dogs, 339 recognized breeds of dogs now. They probably had a common ancestor. That would be a fact. Big dogs and little dogs still have a common ancestor called a dog. That doesn't prove dogs, wolves, and coyotes are related to a banana. Usually I get a 4 or 5-year-old to answer the question, which one is not like the others? And I've only had one ever miss it in my seminar. He said, the boy. Okay, well, true, but it's the banana. All right. National Pornographic says dogs and wolves are related. I would agree. But the Bible says they'll bring forth after their kind. And what we've observed, Timothy, is all animals always bring forth after their kind. Reptiles produce reptiles, lizards produce lizards, birds produce birds. There are no exceptions. Now, if you'd like to believe that, you can, and I think you obviously do. Let me get up to a couple of different slides here. Right here. The chromosome numbers are different. I didn't look up for this. I should have, I guess, if we even know the chromosome, the DNA count of dinosaurs versus some of the birds. But penicillin has 2 chromosomes. Fruit flies have 8. Tomatoes have 12. Actually, tomatoes and houseflies both have 12, so that's proof they're identical twins. Nobody can tell the difference between those two. And then the possum, the redwood tree, and the kidney bean all have 22 chromosomes. Let's see, there's the possum for those that don't know, and the redwood tree, and that's the kidney bean. Average scientist, of course, cannot tell the difference. He thinks they're all related. So counting chromosome numbers, showing similarities doesn't prove anything. Chimpanzees and tobacco both have 48 chromosomes. It doesn't prove anything. It's a common designer, made everything. Used the same alphabet, he used the same DNA code to make everything. Chickens and dogs both have 78. Would you argue that chickens are dogs? They both have the same number of chromosomes. If you want to find similarities, I suppose we could find lots of similarities different ways. But I would point out all observation, all human observation in all of the world, the history of the world, goes against what you're saying. Nobody ever sees any kind of animal produce a different kind of animal. Ferns have 480 chromosomes, so they'd be the grandpa of all of us here. So it is simply a lie number 47 in my series I did, Lies in the Textbooks, to say that the similarities prove anything other than a common designer. Frank Lloyd Wright designed and made some crazy homes all over the place. The house on the rock up in Wisconsin is pretty cool. Frank Lloyd Wright was a kind of a eccentric building designer. And you can look at all the buildings he designed and had built and say, wow, there are some similarities here. Okay, it's coming from the hand of the same, or the mind of the same designer. So I wish you could see. Let me get up here. One more thought here. Right there. You're saying that because there are similarities in the hips or the jaw or the nasal cavities, that therefore they're related. None of that would make any evidence in an honest court of law that wouldn't last 30 seconds. All of it would be dismissed. It's not evidence that they are related. You can interpret it that way, and you do, okay? Structural evidence, they'll say, well, we've got 2 bones in our forearm, the radius and the ulna, and so does the bird. So does the whale. The similar structure, it's used in all the textbooks. I'm in a room full of science textbooks here, hundreds of them. They do indeed teach that there are similarities between the 4-limb structure, called homology. Bird wing, the bat wing, showing them all, homology versus analogy. The term analogous structures pertain to the various structures in different species having the same function but have evolved separately. This is what the textbook says. Thus do not share a common ancestor. And this is the only observable evidence, which is what science deals with, observation, testing, demonstration, is that birds produce birds, and specific kinds of birds. Hummingbirds will never produce a buzzard or a crow. They just can't do it, or a canary. It can't. There are limits. Sure, there are variations. I don't know how many varieties of hummingbirds, probably 100 of them, maybe 200, but they're still hummingbird. They might have had a common ancestor called a hummingbird. I don't know how many kinds of birds God made in the original creation. It'd be a guess on my part, probably a couple of 100 kinds. They've now diversified into thousands of species based on man's classification system. But they call it homologous or analogous, like a hummingbird wing versus the dragonfly wing. And the kid goes away from this class thinking the teacher somehow proved evolution, when they prove no such thing. Evolution evidence, analogous structures. This is not evidence for evolution. This is evidence for design. The platypus and the duck both lay eggs. Yes, boys and girls, look, that proves evolution. You've been taught this stuff all your life, apparently, Timothy, and I guess you believed it. I feel bad for that. You need to get your money back for that education you got. But The evolution is a shell game. The biologist thinks that the geologist has it. The geologist thinks the anthropologist has it. They're all lying. Nobody has any evidence for evolution. So you think dinosaurs turned to birds. The Bible says clearly in Genesis 1 that the fowl will fly above the earth in the open firmament, and every winged fowl after his kind. Let the fowl multiply in the earth. God says very clearly on the fifth day, he made the birds, and they will bring forth after their kind. There are no exceptions to that. None. Nobody's ever seen a duck produce a non-duck, or a bird produce a non-bird, or a reptile produce a non-reptile. You can imagine it if you want, and I think you do, but that's not science. God said every creeping thing will bring forth after their kind, and all this happened on the sixth day. So God made all the reptiles. Actually, he made the birds before he made the reptiles. And you're teaching that the reptiles evolved into birds or turned into birds. Exactly. You're calling God a liar, which of course you're welcome to do. But I think that's a dangerous position to be in. Dragons and owls say, dinosaurs are alive as birds, a scientist says. This is absolutely absurd. It's a bird. It's a dinosaur. This is the common teaching for the last, I'm going to guess, 20 years. What's that? Okay.
20 sounds about right.
Yeah. It's been 20-some years, or whatever it is, that they're teaching this. Breaking news, National Pornographic. Dinosaurs turn to birds. This is ludicrous. A 20-ton dinosaur turned into a chicken. I find it hard to believe that a grown man could believe such a thing. This is, 2000s when they started teaching this, I guess, so 19 or 20 years. This is not science, Timothy. I wish you could see it. It's a vivid imagination. So we'll do some more of this in rebuttal. I've got a whole list of questions to ask you from here. All right. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
All right. So let's see. One of the first things you said was birds coming from non-birds. So I, oddly enough, have a slide for this. So let's see. So this doesn't prove birds evolved or shared a common ancestor, all the things I said. Well, whether or not it does, it doesn't have to in order to prove that birds are dinosaurs. Whether birds evolved or not, they have all the anatomic traits needed to be a dinosaur. If you think that's a problem, that's on you. What I've laid out are simply the facts of the anatomy of birds, both fossil and living. It might not prove birds evolved or share a common ancestor, or that they evolved from non-avians, but it's certainly consistent with the conclusion that they're dinosaurs. So as I said in my first non-introduction slide that I unfortunately kind of skipped over because I forgot to hit the button, but that's on me, I'm not actually here to argue whether or not birds evolved. So, for instance, if you look at, say, cows and deer and goats, we notice that they all have certain commonalities. In fact, the Bible itself calls out these commonalities when it says that the clean animals that you can eat include the cloven-hooved animals that chew the cud. And in fact, that is essentially identical with the modern classification of ungulate. So God created a bunch of ungulates if the special creation story is true. Well, they're all ungulates, whether or not they're the same quote-unquote kind. So it doesn't actually matter as to whether or not birds are dinosaurs, whether or not this proves they evolved. If we want to have the discussion, did birds evolve from non-bird dinosaurs? It's a slightly different question, and there's a lot of the similar evidence, but it's not quite the same question. So that's the whole thing there. Birds with teeth. You brought up a hummingbird that has teeth. In fact, those are not teeth. Those are beak serrations. You can tell the difference because beaks are made of keratin, which is what those serrations are made of, whereas teeth are made of dentin covered with enamel, which is a completely different chemistry. You went into some stuff about Darwin. I believe you're factually incorrect about some of it, but it doesn't matter. It's not at issue. The common ancestor of finches is finches. Even if this were a debate strictly about common ancestry, yes, if you find a group of organisms, all of which are in a particular group, then by definition, their common ancestor would be a member of that group. It would be the first member of that group. Chromosome numbers. This is actually an interesting one, because I've heard you say many times that donkeys and horses are the same kind because they can bring forth. And I'm sure that mules are sterile. Well, they're sterile because donkeys and horses have a different chromosome count. So clearly, chromosome count isn't some kind of barrier to your conception of microevolution limited to kinds, whatever kinds are. So I am very confused every time you bring up chromosomes, because even within a group that you consider related, that is horses as a whole, including zebras, there's variation in chromosome count. So I still am baffled by why you use that argument. Let's see. You said that in passing, scientists can't tell if, I don't know if it was elephants or pine trees or whatever, they think they're related and they can't tell the difference. Well, I know I'm related to all my cousins, but I can still tell them apart. So being related doesn't mean can't be differentiated. So I don't understand that one either. Birds created on the 5th day, and birds and reptiles on the 6th. Well, what about flying reptiles that aren't birds, like a pterodactylus or pteranodon? Would those be made on the 5th day? And either way, they're still made as reptiles if the creation story is true. So this isn't about when things were made. It's not even about kinds. And as far as evolutionists, using the word in quotes, think a 20-ton animal turned into a bird? No, actually, the current consensus is that we have actual fossil evidence that there have always been small to medium-sized theropods, and that it was one of the smaller theropods that turned into a bird, whereas other medium-sized theropods became larger and eventually gave rise to larger theropods. So it's not at all true to say that anything 20-ton is hypothesized as the non-bird ancestor of birds. I think that covers everything you said, so if you want to go with more rebuttals or rebut that, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. You started off that your reason for believing what you believe is based on anatomy. Yes. That there are similar structures.
That there are identical structures that meet the taxonomic criteria for being a dinosaur.
Are you telling the people who are listening here that the structures in the bird skull are identical, your word, identical, to the structures in the dinosaur skull? Is that what you just said?
Well, let me perhaps clarify. What I mean is that there are certain anatomical characteristics for any group which define that group, right? And within that, the exact structure can vary a bit, right? So for instance, mammals all have a joint for the jaw and the cranium between the squamosal bone of the cranium and the dentary bone of the jaw. Exactly where that sits on the skull and exactly how big it is will change. But from a taxonomic standpoint, that's an identical characteristic. And the word identical is perhaps not the right word to use. But because birds share these characteristics in the same way all mammals share this particular jaw joint, that means that they meet, well, and the whole host of other anatomical features, they meet the taxonomic definition for dinosaur, just like they meet the taxonomic definition for vertebrate, which is animals with a backbone. I don't think you would argue that birds aren't vertebrates, would you?
I would agree. They're vertebrate based on our current classification system.
Right.
Sure.
Well, in the same way, they're dinosaurs. They have the anatomy that is required to be a dinosaur.
So the car has the same frame as a pickup truck. Therefore, the car is a pickup truck because they both have a frame.
Well, they're both automobiles.
Is a car a pickup truck? Or
No.
Can you distinguish between a car and a pickup truck, or do you need help on that?
No, I think, given that I drive both, I think I can figure out the difference.
Okay. So the fact that there are some similarities in the structure might prove that's a common design structure that works well and came from a pretty smart fellow who decided they need a frame.
Okay.
So all your arguments for these similar structures are just exactly proof of a designer. God made everything. And because all we observe is, see, you're relying on fossils that are found. Keep in mind, fossils don't have children. You cannot prove those fossils had any children that lived, and certainly you couldn't prove that fossils had children that lived that were different. And I would point out that this is relying on something in the past that we really cannot document. Observable science shows us birds produce birds, the same variety of birds over and over and over again. There are simply no exceptions. So if you choose to believe, capital B, believe, that birds and dinosaurs are related to each other because of similar structure, you're completely missing the point. The similar structures is proof the same guy designed them all, and it works really well. We all have to live in similar environments. We have to handle the gases in the atmosphere, the oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, etc. So the animals have to breathe in and separate the oxygen, so they would probably have similar structures. Do you think dinosaurs had a sac-type lung? Like birds breathe in and have multiple sacs coming off of their lung.
Actually,
Did a dinosaur have the same kind of lung as a bird?
not only did they, but crocodilians, who are also archosaurs, have a reduced form of the same type of lung.
Okay.
So this type of respiration is part of the category of archosaur. Now, here's the thing, Kent. I'm not here to argue for evolution. That's a separate question. If you want to go with all of these animals were designed by God, for the purposes of this particular discussion, that's fine. I'm here because on several occasions I've heard you say things to the effect that believing that birds are dinosaurs is insane or stupid. And in fact, I believe at one point, referencing this very debate, you said there are some kinds of stupid you just can't fix.
I agree. I stand by my previous statement. It is exactly correct. Go ahead.
Fair enough. But one other thing you brought up here was, what can we tell from fossils? Well, we can tell more than just that they died. We can tell that they lived. We can tell the features of their anatomy. Is it a vertebrate? Is it a dinosaur? Is it a mammal? Is it a frog? We can tell that it had parents like itself. So we know that there was a population of such creatures. We can be pretty well sure that whatever fossil we find wasn't something that simply existed in isolation and never had any parents. And so because we can tell these things, we can tell what taxonomic categories. So let me ask a question. Do you think that bird is a real category? Is there something that actually unites all birds?
I guess you'd have to define the word category. Carolus Linnaeus divided things up, with kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. The Bible simply divides them up according to their kind. I'm not sure that the Bible kind classification fits our modern Carolus Linnaeus classification. It may, in some cases, be at the species level. So other places might be at the family level. Right. I don't think God cares. I don't think God cares what Carolus Linnaeus thought. God made up his first and said they'll bring forth after their kind. So right. I think birds are birds, and they're a bird kind. And I think a 5-year-old can tell you it's a bird. Okay. So do you think that I heard you in other debates say that you think that maybe God created some 50 or so kinds of birds in the beginning. Is that something that does that seem reasonable still? A pure guess on my part. Right. But yeah, let's start with the number 50. Sure.
Okay. So you don't think that God created one pair or group of identical birds that then later diversified into all modern birds, including ostriches and finches and hummingbirds?
No. I don't think ostriches and finches are related in the common ancestor.
Okay. But
we have emus here. They are very different than ostriches, even though they're an awfully big bird. They have 3 toes instead of 2 like the ostrich. They have a totally different feather. So I think the same designer designed them. Okay. That's all. Just like coming from the hand of General Motors, there's all kinds of cars that have a lot of similarities.
Right.
It's coming from the same mind.
Okay. So, but even the Bible that you said you read referenced the birds of the air, right? Is that what I believe was the actual quote, was birds of the air?
There is a phrase, birds of the air. Okay. There are also obviously birds that run on the ground, like penguins and ostrich and emus, but go ahead.
So it seems like both you and the Bible and I would agree that whether or not they're all related, there is this distinct group of animals called birds. And they all have something in common, right?
I hear a voice, but see no man.
Okay.
We're back.
Oh, okay, good. Oh my goodness. I was worried there.
Tell me what, our router decided to reset itself.
Our router reset itself, he said. Now, your question, don't you think complex things like computers, which are nothing compared to a bird, should fix themselves automatically? Anyway, go ahead, Timothy. You're in the middle of a thought here, and we lost you.
Oh, yeah. So what I was trying to get at is whether or not these different groups of birds are special creations. It seems like both you and I and the Bible agree that they're all a group called birds and that's a real thing. There's a real commonality. God didn't design a cat with feathers that's like a half cat, half bird. Okay. All I am arguing is that if special creation is true, or if evolution is true, there's an even larger category called dinosaur that many more animals than birds fit in, but that so do birds. That's all I'm arguing. And my evidence for that is the same as the evidence that all birds are in this group, which is they share certain characteristics. They all have feathers, they all have beaks, they all have a pygostyle, They all have fused metatarsal bones. All of these are things that make a bird, whether or not they're related. Well, similarly, an anterorbital fenestra, a temporal fenestrae, a crocodile reverse ankle, an open acetabulum, all of those things make them dinosaurs.
No, all of those things make them similar in some ways. I'd say there are probably a lot of similarities between airplanes and cars, and that some, especially small planes, have internal combustion piston-driven engines, and so do most cars on the road. That doesn't prove any that they're evolving from each other. It's a design that works. Internal combustion piston-driven, driving a crankshaft, turning a crankshaft. It works. Overhead valves. It's a system that works, and so they've used it in a variety of applications: single cylinder, twin cylinder, three cylinder, etc., because it works. So I think the designer who created all these different animals, his name is God, and he wrote a book about it, by the way, called Bible. He used the same similar design for many creatures because it's necessary. A system of extracting the oxygen from the air. Well, the lungs do that.
Okay.
And that's a pretty cool system. Plants have a very different one. They have to extract the carbon dioxide from the air. They don't want the oxygen, they want the CO2. So God designed them to extract CO2. So the fact that there are similarities, which you're pointing out, you're completely missing the point. That doesn't prove any common ancestor. I mentioned that no fossil would count as evidence for evolution because you can't prove it had any children. Your response was that we believe if you find a fossil, you know it had parents like itself. Timothy, listen to what you're saying. Of course it had parents like itself. It's going to have babies like itself also. Every farmer on the planet will tell you animals produce babies like themselves. Cows produce cows, dogs produce dogs. But if you stand a T-Rex or any kind of dinosaur next to any kind of bird, I think a 2-year-old can tell you which is dinosaur, which is bird. For you to imagine that they're somehow related to a common ancestor is wild Spongebob stuff imagination. It's not science, that's for sure.
Okay. Well, so as far as it's just SpongeBob imagination goes, none of the anatomical features I've mentioned are imaginary. And the anatomical definition of dinosaur also isn't imaginary. And since these are the only things I've used to support my argument, I haven't used any idea of cladograms. I haven't used any evolutionary processes. All I've used is 1, the anatomical definition of dinosaur, and 2, the anatomical features of birds. None of this is imagination. And I'm a little concerned because I've said probably 8 or 9 times now that I don't care whether or not birds are related by common ancestry or whether or not they're related to other dinosaurs. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to say there's a definition for dinosaur. Dinosaurs are archosaurs with, among other things, an open acetabulum. They have an elongate deltopectoral crest on the humerus, extensively perforated acetabulum or open acetabulum, arched dorsal margin of the ilium, a femoral head turned and distinctly offset from the shaft, asymmetric fourth trochanter, an astragalus with acute anterior-medial corner. All of these things are what makes a dinosaur, and several others. And all of those things are present in birds. So just like whales are mammals, because they have hair, they give milk, they have a dentary-squamosal jaw joint, they're warm-blooded. Because of all these things, whales are mammals. In the same way, birds are dinosaurs, even though birds are unusual when we think of the whole group of dinosaurs, just like whales are unusual when we think of the whole group of mammals, because not many mammals look like whales.
Okay, well, if you're going, I guess you're trying to draw a circle to include birds and dinosaurs, and I guess I can understand that could be done if you could put all living things into one circle, and say, well, mosquitoes and dinosaurs and birds and tomatoes all fit in that circle of living things.
Sure, let's do that.
That's the concentric circles of any classification system.
Right.
We have transportation devices. Gee whiz, that's a big circle that includes skateboards all the way to jet planes.
Okay.
Prove they're related? No, we're drawing our circle too big.
But Ken, I'm not trying to prove that they're related here.
Okay, so you're wanting to include dinosaurs in with the bird category because they're both living things.
Other way around.
Okay, you want to include birds in with the dinosaur category.
Right.
Because they're both living things. In that case, you would be correct.
Right.
They both have internal skeletons.
Yep.
You'd be correct. They both reproduce.
Well, that would already be all living things, so we've already covered that one.
Well, they reproduce with eggs. How's that? That narrows it down. Not all living things reproduce with eggs. They lay an egg. Some have, live birth. Humans, for example, or monkeys. That's a different type. They don't have an egg.
I wouldn't use that to distinguish them, but I would say maybe hard-shelled eggs.
Okay. So do all dinosaurs have hard-shelled eggs? Is that what you're saying?
All dinosaur eggs that we have found have been hard-shelled. I guess I can't say with 100% certainty that there isn't some dinosaur out there that had a soft-shelled egg, but if there is, we haven't found that egg. So currently, all evidence points to dinosaurs having laid hard-shelled eggs.
Okay, so if we classify all things that are capable of moving, if we draw a circle that includes all things capable of moving,
Okay.
well, that would be a pretty big circle. And so you're determined to put birds and dinosaurs in the same circle. Okay.
Well, that is a big circle. It's called Eubetazoa, and it includes pretty much every animal that isn't a sponge.
Sure. And they're capable of they have internal. They're eukaryotes. They have an internal nucleus surrounded by a nuclear membrane.
Right, but that's an even bigger symbol or circle.
Right. That'd be a big circle. But somehow, you guys want to use these circles because we can put mosquitoes and whales in the same circle. They both move.
Okay.
That doesn't prove any relationship. This isn't any evidence for evolution.
I'm not arguing for evolution right now.
Well,
I do argue for evolution at other times. Don't get me wrong. I do fully argue for evolution at times. But what I am saying is this circle for dinosaurs is a real thing. There is a group of animals that belong in this circle, and they don't belong in any other circle adjacent to it. And inside that circle of dinosaurs is another smaller circle, and it's called aves, and it's all of the birds. And this isn't some hypothesis. This is simply a fact of anatomy. Just like it's a fact of anatomy that, say, deer and goats are both cloven-hooved animals that chew the cud. That's not a question that we have to ask. And so when you say things like, it's insane to believe that birds are dinosaurs, what you're saying is, it is insane to take seriously the anatomical evidence that we have of birds that puts them inside the circle of dinosaurs. But that's just to say that believing reality is insane.
No. Reality's I love reality. That's great. I wish the evolutionists could get a dose of it once in a while. Birds produce birds. Reptiles produce reptiles. Lizards produce lizards. There are no exceptions. So if you're trying to draw a circle big enough to include birds in with the category of dinosaurs, I suppose we could do that by drawing a circle and calling the circle all living things.
Right.
Or all things that breathe oxygen, or all things that reproduce.
Right. And if you said that birds aren't living things and to believe so is insane, I would also disagree with you. Because we can draw that circle. That's a fine circle to draw. Life is a thing. All living things have certain similarities that they don't have to non-living things.
Sure.
Okay. So we draw that circle. This is what taxonomy is, whether or not evolution is true. All living things are more similar to each other than they are to any non-living thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, taxonomy, they've argued this for centuries, things change classification all the time based on nutrients. When they first found the platypus, it confused everybody. What on earth is this thing anyway? They tried to tear the beak off. They thought somebody sewed it on there.
Okay.
But
then
there really is
figured it out.
What is the platypus in the same group with dinosaurs?
No, platypus is in the mammal group because it has hair, it is warm-blooded, it has a dentary squamosal jaw joint, and it gives milk. Those are the things that make a mammal, at least if we take only modern animals into account.
Okay, so our modern classification system would not put the platypus in with the birds or dinosaurs.
No.
And you're trying to put the birds in with the dinosaurs because of these similarities that you mentioned in the first half of this discussion.
Yes, because those are the similarities that make a dinosaur what a dinosaur is. So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that. The word dinosaur literally means terrible lizard. Right. I don't know why you're trying to say dinosaurs are not lizards when that's what the word means. What is the difference in your thinking between a dinosaur and a lizard?
So there are a number of differences. One is that lizards have pleurodont teeth, if I'm remembering the word correctly, which means their teeth grow out of a groove that goes around the jaw. Dinosaurs, like all archosaurs, have thecodont teeth, which means the teeth come in a socket. Another important difference is that lizards have closed one of their temporal foramen, whereas dinosaurs have not. Lizards have a parietal
Wait.
foramen.
Oh, let's get you to clarify that.
Okay.
You said the lizard closed off this part of the brain?
No, it's the part of the skull.
Okay, so the lizard decided to close off that part of the skull? Is that what you said?
They close during embryonic development. It's
So
not a conscious choice.
the lizard's not doing this. It's designed to do this during embryonic development, right?
Well, the lizard is doing it, whether or not it's by design, it's still doing it. Just like when it grows a tail according to the genetic code that tells it to do so.
So does the lizard have an option to decide not to grow the tail if it wants?
No, not a conscious option.
It's what now?
It's not a conscious option. There's no choice made by the lizard.
Right, like the caterpillar, does it decide to become a butterfly, or is it already pre-programmed it's going to become a butterfly?
Well, it's definitely pre-programmed that the only thing it can become is a butterfly or a moth, I guess, depending on which caterpillar it is.
Right.
Excuse me. I don't know exactly what triggers that transformation. There could be some kind of neurological activity that does it, in which case we could then argue about whether or not animals make choices. But I'll just say no.
So did the dinosaurs decide to change to birds, or you're saying we could put them in the same circle? I would agree. We could put them in the circle of living things, or things that move, or things that have blood. Sure, there's all kinds of circles we could put it in, but I think you're trying to imply that there also is a relationship, as in evolutionary relationship, which is not true. Everything you've proven is that you can draw a circle.
So we both agree that we can draw circles around living things in sequentially smaller categories. Okay. Do you think that some circles that we could draw would be wrong?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Well, depends what you label the circle, I guess.
So let's say I wanted to draw a circle just around frogs and dogs, and call them the cat or the frog dog circle. Would that be a wrong circle to draw? Would you say no? There are things that you should separate these into separate circles because they're so different.
It depends on what you're going to title your circle. If the title of your circle is living things, then sure, frogs and dogs could go in the same circle. No problem.
This is a circle that only includes frogs and it only includes dogs. Everything else is outside the circle. Would that be a wrong circle to draw?
I think that'd be a wrong circle to draw. Just like your circle if you only want birds and dinosaurs in the circle, you got a wrong circle.
Okay, so all I'm arguing is that circle actually is a valid circle, and what these circles are called in the scientific literature would be a taxon, right?
Sure.
So a taxon is defined by certain anatomical category or features. So the taxon of vertebrata means that you have to have vertebrae. You have to be a vertebrate to be in it.
Right.
And anything out, right? So dinosaurs, mammals, frogs, fish. Okay. So the circle that defines Dinosauria, right? The things you have to have are the temporal fenestrae I mentioned, the antorbital fenestra I mentioned, the ankle joint that I mentioned, the hip structure I mentioned, the particular formation of the fourth trochanter on the femur that I mentioned, the thecodont teeth. That's how you tell an animal is a dinosaur. So if you find a skeleton and we want to say, oh, is this the skeleton of a dinosaur? That's what we look at. So for instance, if you find a femur, big old femur in the ground, it could be a woolly mammoth femur. It could be a dinosaur femur. It could be a whole host of things, right? Well, if you know about taxonomy, you can look at it and say, okay, does this femur have an asymmetric fourth trochanter or no fourth trochanter at all? And if it does, well, it's a dinosaur femur. And now we know. That's the femur of a dinosaur. But the thing is, if you find a vulture femur on the ground or an ostrich femur on the ground, you're also going to find an asymmetrical fourth trochanter.
Could there be another reason for that? Like maybe it needs to retract the femur. Obviously, the trochanter is where the muscle attaches to pull on the bone. Right. Weightlifters who work out a lot, that gets larger.
Well, why
don't it retracts the femur?
Do you know what muscle it is?
Running.
Do you know what this muscle is that it attaches to?
I couldn't hear you. What now?
Oh, the muscle that the fourth trochanter attaches to is the caudofemoralis longus. You don't have one of those.
Okay.
So it's not like that's the only way to make an animal run. And interestingly, all of the animals that have a fourth trochanter and therefore a caudofemoralis longus muscle all also share other traits that make them all archosaurs, like thecodont teeth, the fenestrated skull in a particular way. It seems like they probably also share, all of them, this unidirectional respiratory system like a bird has. They also all share 4-chambered hearts. I don't know if you know, but crocodiles have 4-chambered hearts. They don't use one of the chambers, but they have it.
Did dinosaurs have a 4-chambered heart?
Well, there was a report of a preserved ornithischian heart, and I believe that there is still a debate going on about that. But if it is, in fact, a heart, it does look like a 4-chambered heart. So
would that take it out of the reptile category then?
No, because the reptile category is essentially it's synonymous with Diapsida, which is all those animals with those 2 holes in the back of their head or not their head, but their skull, that are used for jaw attachment or jaw muscle attachment.
Right.
So that's the category of reptilia. Some of them have 3 hearts. Or sorry, it's not 3 hearts, 3-chambered hearts.
Right.
None of them have 3 hearts. I'm sorry. Some of them have 4-chambered hearts. Sorry, that was, I don't know how that happened.
Maybe you're misunderstanding my motive and goal in this. Here's a textbook from, it's on the shelf over here somewhere. The biology textbooks do teach birds are the descendants of dinosaurs.
Okay.
This is very different than saying you can draw a circle around the two because they both have similar structures. This is literally saying that birds are descendants of dinosaurs. I think this is stupid. I think this is wrong. I think this is criminal to teach this to kids when it's not scientifically provable. All we ever, birds probably had, if you find bird skeleton, you could, like you said, that proves it had parents like itself, which were bird. But if birds are descendants from dinosaurs, then somewhere along the line, somebody had a baby that did not turn out like itself. This is not observable. This is not science. This is religion. You guys have a religion. You believe birds are descendants of dinosaurs. That's not science. That's my objection.
Well, I have two I suppose, counters here. One is, if in fact the category of dinosaur is a valid category and birds fit inside of it, then all birds are descended from dinosaurs simply because all birds are dinosaurs. Just like I'm descended from vertebrates. My parents were vertebrates. Whether or not they're related to other vertebrates that aren't human, they're still vertebrates. So I'm descended from vertebrates. And the second...
Okay, hang on. Because you're a vertebrate and your parents were vertebrates, does that mean you are related to ducks, which are vertebrates?
Not by itself, but it does mean I'm descended from vertebrates. So it is still correct, whether or not birds evolved from non-bird dinosaurs, to say that birds descended from dinosaurs. Now, I understand that your problem isn't simply saying that birds descended from dinosaurs, but that birds descended from non-bird dinosaurs. Is that accurate?
Well, nothing ever descends from anything other than its kind. The Bible says they'll bring forth after its kind. Birds and dinosaurs are a different kind of animal. They have a lot of similarities because they have the same designer, but that's not showing an evolutionary relationship.
Okay, and evolution.
The same guy designed them.
Okay, so I'm going to make an analogy for evolution. Okay, imagine you had like Microsoft Word. You use Word, I assume.
Yes.
Okay. So let's say you type the letter A and save the file and send it to 2 people. Okay? And they each type one random letter, and then each of them send it off to 2 more people. Okay? So now we have, and let's say they do this 8 times. Okay? So now we have a whole bunch of these files with strings of letters, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, at any point, if all they did was type a new letter at the end, are any of these new files going to start with a letter other than A?
No, but I think you're missing the analogy here. Is it possible to type a series of letters that do not make a word?
Yes.
Sure. So if just typing random letters, if by word we mean an analogy would be something that's able to live, is it possible to have a scrambling of the DNA and produce an offspring that is not capable of living because the gene code is too screwed up? Does that ever happen?
That's not the part. All I'm talking about right now is why it is that evolution doesn't say anything about one kind becoming another kind. Because all that evolution is every time there's a new division between species, right? A new clade has formed that's still a member of the previous clade. So every time you send off that letter, and someone types a new letter at the end of it, that's 2 new clades being formed. But all the previous letters also indicate previous clades that that organism already belonged to. So if you find this file and it says ABCX, and you find another file that says ABDY, we know that they're both AB files. And they both descended from files that started with A, and they both descended from files that started with B. And there's another set of files that both start with A, but that their next letter is, say, Q. And so at no point do the previous letters get deleted, just like at no point do the previous clades get erased. So the first bird, if we could imagine such a thing, it would actually be a population that would later give rise to future birds, was a bird, but it didn't stop being a dinosaur. It didn't stop being a theropod. It didn't stop being a coelurosaur. It didn't stop being a maniraptoran. At no point does a new kind move away from the old kinds.
All right, Timothy, we're out of time here, but let me ask you a question. This first bird that you think did not stop being a dinosaur, but it now was a bird, who did it marry?
Well, like I said just now, the first bird in, air quotes, would actually be a population of birds that would later give rise to other birds.
Wait, hold on. So you're saying a whole bunch of them did this at once?
So a population of dinosaurs.
But a whole population of birds came at once. Because don't the male birds have to have a female bird to make babies?
So I'm going to try and finish the thought. So
okay.
When this happens, there would already be a host of various populations or species that are all to varying degrees bird-like. So just like
so a bunch of them did it at the same time in the same place, all right?
No.
What if one was in America, one was in,
let me try and finish the thought.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One of these would eventually become the ancestor population of all future birds.
What, by itself or the two of them?
Well, even if it were two of them, those two would share a common ancestor that was itself the common ancestor of all future birds. So one population at some point of things that were already very bird-like became the ancestor of all birds, and that was the first population that we can call a bird. There are other things that would be living at the same time that would be almost indistinguishable from it, but because they did not give rise to the future diversity of birds, they're not technically birds according to the phylogenetics.
All right. Now, Timothy, we're out of time here. We got to quit, but I got lots of things going on here. Come on down and visit our Dinosaur Adventureland. So this...
I tried, actually. Last time I was in Alabama, but I was too far away and I didn't have enough time.
Come on down. We'll save you a spot. So this first bird, a whole population of them came at the same time. Do you realize
always exists simultaneously with other members of the population?
Okay.
Yeah.
I would just like you to realize and try to understand one thought here on this.
Okay.
What you're saying is not science. It's imagination. You think it happened. You hope it happened. You believe it happened. It's not science. It's religion. I wish you could see that. You believe it. You believe it very strongly. And I'm proud of you. I wish I had your faith. I don't have, it's misplaced, Timothy. You need to put your faith in Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for you and wants to be your Savior and wrote a book. And you're calling him a liar because Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning.
Well, like I said, I'm not going to discuss my personal religious reviews on air.
Okay. Well, if you believe dinosaurs lived way millions of years before man, keep in mind you are calling Jesus a liar, which you're welcome to do. I think you'll regret that one day, but that is what you're doing. So let's have another debate on this topic and finish up some of these loose ends. I got too many things going here now. But thank you for coming on my channel, and I guess I'm on your channel. I don't know how that works. I'm sorry about the technical stuff.
It just means that I'm also streaming. It's not,
okay,
not a big deal. And
I'm going to call in with questions. They can call me anytime, 855-BIG-DINO, extension 3. I take about 1 million phone calls a day. And Timothy, I appreciate you coming on. If you'd put that faith in the right spot, you can make a great Christian. We'd love to have you. All right. Got to go. See you later. Bye-bye.
See you later. All right. So I'm going to... How do I disconnect here? There we go.
All right.
So that is the debate. I actually probably will try to schedule a follow-up. I think I may actually go more into the actual evolutionary side of it rather than just going into the anatomy. But I think it's pretty clear, just based on anatomy, that birds are definitely dinosaurs. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to stop streaming. I am going to come back in a bit with an after show, hopefully, as long as I can get a few people for the after show. And the after show will also go up on my channel. And I'm the Dapper Dinosaur.